I'd like to say hello and welcome to the fourth installment of the We Are in Dark Times series. I am hoping to air out and address several issues that are going on, um, both in the United States and abroad. That's the way these things tend to go. And in addressing these issues, I want there to be an understanding of the many instances of problems that we currently have. Let me say hello to O'Donoghue. So, on a domestic front, I've mentioned before that we have, um, I've spoken about the failures of capitalism, Sale of the Envoy, and the inability to really pay much attention to things that matter, and how the oligarchy has controlled many of the politicians that we have in office who are allowed to effectively go around and serve the best interest of those that stuff dirty paper in their pockets, as opposed to individuals who, are the common man. And in this system, you have a number of things that stop these people who keep up the screwed version of reality from going. And it's typically a lack of name recognition. You have the media refusing to cover other candidates. There's just a wide plethora of things that go into um, the continued usage of candidates and policies that have been proven to be ineffective and to also not matter in terms of just having a positive benefit on the people that they govern. But I wanted to, in particular, speak on I think the back burner of these issues. I say a little Dirk, and it's something a lot of people probably wouldn't realize. You see, um, and look, none of this stuff can be solved overnight or tomorrow. But when we become so dispirited and disillusioned with things, we involve ourselves in a form of complacency, and that effectively is we accept for ourselves that things will not change, and that nothing we do can make any impact. This is why you have people who write off going to school. Oh, the funding to go there is going to cost too much, as opposed to actually staying there and getting an education, which it's true, it is very costly. This is why you have people who recognize the corruption that we have and say, well, it's never going to change. Even if you explain to them this has only been going on for the last 30 or 40 years. It's a relatively new phenomenon. We're talking about a country that's been around for over 200 years now. It was not this way, um, in the generation of many people's great grandparents or other relatives. So, that's one thing. But I've mentioned the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I guess the reason I hearken back to that so much is I want people to understand what's effectively being conveyed, because the U.S.'s relationship with Israel is so radically different from its support systems for other countries. It really is a phenomenon. Israel effectively becomes the only country that politicians on both parties have to allow both sides to just get away with. Neither side will criticize the country. Neither side will say, "Hey, you did the wrong thing here," because they are afraid of being called anti-Semitic. Having people claim that they hate a group just because of their religion or because of their religion, and you will sit these people down. A lot of these supposed Jewish advocacy groups, even though the true terror is the current prime minister of that country. But story for another day. Um, you will sit these people down. You will tell them, no, I only have a problem with this government, and they will stick things in their ears and go, I don't want to hear that. It goes against my belief system, so let me write it off and pretend it's not going on, or it's not a factor in why one could have opposition to this country's policies toward other people, such as the Palestinians. Well, in particular, the Palestinians. They're the only ones they can get away with treating very poorly and awful. And like I said, when we had that Senate primary with the Patrick Little guy, I kept saying the one thing he was correct on was in speaking about Israel's poor treatment of Palestinians. Those people have been treated like dogs. You've actually had people compare it to the handling of what the Africans during apartheid in South Africa. Okay, old school music says we've always been in dark times. It's just that we see it more often because of social media and the availability of the news. There have always been problems with things, but I mean, 100 years ago, we didn't have it to where there were mass shootings and people would, instead of saying, "Hey, let's take away these firearms," would put their hands and arms under their legs and pray for things to get better. So I don't agree with that statement necessarily. I think there have always been issues within society, but to suggest that we've always been in some kind of deep wormhole, I think is inaccurate. And really, what I'm trying to say here is that when you have issues, especially the ones that again are caused by people, it's not like a natural disaster, which those are things I might find more likely to just kind of say, oh yeah, we have to resign our faith to that. And even then, people are questioning whether climate change could do something about it. Why are your videos so long? Don't watch it. Simple as that. And again, if the video was truly so long, if 40, 50 minutes, an hour was that long, you wouldn't have people going to see films that are twice as long. So spare me. Like people, you guys are focusing on the wrong things. I keep trying to explain that, and this goes back to one of the other issues I have, which is complacency, where people will know there's a problem, and then they pin their focuses on something that is of a more minor attribution. Now, in dark times too, you had a user who became upset with the fact that I was saying, oh, Black Lives Matter should also give attention to when African Americans are killed by other African Americans. I would figure a group with that name would do that, whatever. I was accused of trying to take away attention from police brutality, all these different things. And, as I was kind of sitting back today, I became aware of the story of Muhammadin Baha, who was a Black Lives Matter activist. He actually is one of their most prominent activists. He died earlier this year in a shooting, apparently a robbery. He was shot in I think, the thigh. Now, this is a person who, and let me also just preface this by saying that a couple of, right after that stream was published, there was a user who I'd seen on my profile before who commented that he would like to see some kind of brutality exercise toward me for espousing an opinion he didn't like. And let me tell you something. I went and watched a couple of clips of Deba, and he talked about how getting rid of the Confederate flag was a major thing we need to be focused with, which I personally don't agree. He voiced an opinion that was completely diametrically opposed to mine on something and probably on other things, but there was no doubt in my mind that his homicide should be paid attention to. And in seeing the lack of rallies and attention that was paid to, remember, this is one of the major activists of Black Lives Matter. In seeing such a lack of interest in what happened with him, it made the fact that they don't pay attention to black on black homicides make all the more sense. It felt like it was a confirmation, a very prolific one. Again, someone that was one of their top guys was effectively, posthumously ignored after dying in a very gruesome way. He didn't deserve that, and there's no doubt in my mind. I don't, and see, I guess that's what kind of gets me, that we have people who like to believe not only in monolithic thought where everyone has to think the same way, but we also feel this need to go out and express our hatred for someone because they said something we didn't like. And this man in this clip I saw earlier today said things I didn't like, but it's still wrong that he's deceased. It's still wrong that the group that he assisted with heavily is not doing anything to solve his murder or bring attention to it. And people will say, "Oh, you're cherry picking a person in that group um, who is, part of the, you're trying to use one person in that group to destroy that, take down the whole group. No, we can go and look up other um, cases of African Americans getting killed by people in unsolved homicides where we don't know if it was a cop. We can assume it wasn't a cop or somebody of the main ethnic group, and they just won't say anything. The reason I bring him up is because it's sad to see someone be part of what I would rather him sit up there and espouse an opinion different from mine than go and sell crack or do something else counterproductive. Um, so just to see him get ended that way was a very saddening sight. No, I have not heard of this fund. I don't know what that has to do with anything. Dirk says, then again, that would also branch off to gun violence as well, but that's not happening. Pretty much. Old School Music says, it's been real worse over here on the west side of Chicago. There's a serial killer running around missing girls and people killing others. Brian says, greeting and salutations. Old School Music says they're looking for him. I hope they get him. Um, but again, that's another dilemma we're facing. What is the topic? Go watch We Are in Dark Times, We Are in Dark Times 2, and We Are in Dark Times 3 to figure out what the topic is. It is an assortment of issues that I feel are not being addressed, that people very consistently ignore, that the media won't tell you about. That's the topic here. Now, if you find it boring, or if you like what's his name, uh, whatever his name was, 14, don't like it, guys can always bail out like the banks. It's the redundancy and constant dilemma of our contemporary society. Uh, Brian says, I was on a media cleanse where I gave up technology for a week and a half. Excuse me. No, you didn't miss anything in that week and a half. The last one was, I think, about 2 weeks ago. Also, there are 12 people in here. I'd appreciate more than 2 likes, which, by the way, I want to just call attention to something else. I did a stream on the oligarchy, which is the fact that we have these people who can give dirty paper to our politicians. And the stream never cracked more than 7 viewers. And while sitting here, I noticed that there was one person that would come in, then come out. I said, that's really weird. What's going on there? I come back maybe 2, 3 hours later. I've got half as many dislikes as likes. And it revealed to me that there is actually a user who, for at least maybe a week or two now, has actually been making multiple accounts to jack up the rating scale on my content. And I'll admit it is annoying to know that you have a person who literally has nothing better to do than log in one account, sign up on that one, sign up on this one, sign up on that one. Um, and that's a direct result of just thinking to yourself, like, as I was sitting here and kind of saying, why can't this person just go away? I thought about, how far deeper it was. So, if this person spent half the time that they do making these accounts to, play play like and dislike fraud, we wouldn't, we might actually see something beneficial to that person. I mean, I'm not, here to make anyone feel bad, but the world is burning. You literally have half the American people can afford $1,000 emergency. You have 90% of African Americans getting killed by someone that looks like them. You have what 7 in 10 black kids being born without a father, which typically is aligned with the more undesirable circumstances of life. And this person's entire contribution to that dialogue and discussion is playing create account, delete account, create account, log into another account, create account, log into another account. That is absolutely insane. And it's disturbing to sit here and think about how there are all these real issues going on and people just they don't care. Not only do they not care, but they always claim to you that I'm not interested in this because it was boring to me. Um, like, for example, I will sit here and I'll read an article, and if I just read an article or something I wrote ahead of time, people will get bored by that and they'll start leaving the stream. and they'll say, "Oh, I don't want to hear you read that." But if I told you, "Hey, go to this link and read this," what are the chances you would have read that for yourself? So if I want you to be privy to information, I don't want to just memorize all of it in my head and break it down in different words. Um, I'm screwed if I read it to you, and I'm screwed if I tell you to go read it. So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And that's kind of been a scenario with content sometimes. And I guess really complacency probably is going to be the center focus of what I'm trying to convey here, because as I've spoken about these different issues, you have people that will come in here about other things as you've seen like 3 or 4 times already in the last 15 minutes. And I've always explained, if you want to speak on a certain topic, leave a comment saying that you want to do so. Um, it's a fairly simple system. I think it's a fairly reasonable one, and I think that it's a very courteous way of conveying what you want done. And most topics I wouldn't turn down just because I unless I was unfamiliar with it, which at that point I would try to familiarize myself with it, at least in the slightest, to enough to give you a brief overview. So when you have people that just rush in there to ask, "Did you see this movie? Uh, what about this fund? Did you take a shower today?" Just all these different things. Come on, let's get back to the actual thing at hand, because it scares me to think that someone will just come in there. They'll say, "Screw what's being discussed," and do this. Okay, Old School Music says, how about allowing a Google Hangout type of streamer you invite guest speakers or allow an open forum for speaking with viewers? Problem with that is I have to moderate. I mean, you already see right here, you have people writing all kind of crazy comments. If you let people um, jump inside out of nowhere, they're going to, there's a higher chance of them speaking off the cuff or saying something that is not desirable or forwarding to what the topic is. Well, we're mainly speaking on complacency and how that has a direct impact on uh, all of the issues here. And again, if the last commenter who wants the live stream of a Q&A really wants a live stream of a Q&A, he can leave that as a comment on a separate video, uh, send me a private message. There are many ways this can be done. So I don't know what else to say in regards to that, or just of how to show you what ways to properly communicate that idea. Um, and I'm kind of surprised you're still here. I thought the stream was too long. I thought the length was too far. It would be cool to talk, but it needs yeah. So I wouldn't have a problem with having those kind of communications. I just need people to understand that there is uh, a number of issues that don't have to do with our personal lives. Like most of the stuff I'm speaking about currently, I can get away with not paying attention to. If I don't talk about the Palestinian-Israeli thing, regardless if I speak about it or not, doesn't impact me. The homicides, you go to the right place, you can avoid it for the most part. All of it's stuff that generally does not have to do with me, but I think that they are. No, I'm not a fan of that series, Dwight. Uh, kind of surprised your last name isn't Eisenhower. That's usually what the last time I think of anytime I see that first name. Brian says we stick to our guns too much politically and wind up falling back into issues. Yeah. No, I can totally get behind that. I just think that people don't want to hear the other side out, and it's like even when you try to have discussions with people, they don't want to concede anything. Like, I'll fully concede that um, running these candidates who aren't bought out by some you know donor and his pieces of dirty paper. It's hard because they're going to face the media pretending they don't exist, that there's some kind of fridge person. In addition to whether if the state is big, having to go around the whole place, it's a very challenging thing to do. But you'll have people who will just say, "Oh, it's so hard, I can't do it," and we've seen people win before, you know. So it's a bunch of hogwash. Also, old school. I'm just not seeing that comment from earlier. The reason I didn't have it earlier was because I was preoccupied, loads and loads of activities. Said, "Oh, I'll do it this afternoon," and the afternoon passes, so we have to take it to the evening. Pet peeves, mine are argumentative cognitive dissonance, passive aggressiveness, online disinhibition effect. I guess my pet peeves are just really having people like, and I've never understood this about viewers of this channel. They know that a majority of the content here is political, and then they'll run in here to discuss something else. And I'll say to them, look, I don't have a problem talking about that, but there's a time and place for everything, and there's a way to ask that. And it's like if you say I would just like this to be done this way, you're the villain. Just like I tell you guys about this voice actor. Now here you have a person who had weeks to not even do what they were told to do, just give me their lines for this content, and for whatever reason they just decided to not only not respond to what I was saying, but also be proven to be online long enough to respond, and then get mad when I don't talk to them the way they would have liked me to talk to them about something that I had no idea regarding. So it all fits under the same umbrella. Envoy says, I'm currently watching UFC. I'm in and out of the chat. LOL. I'm trying to catch up on what you're saying. I'm just discussing I guess the behind the scenes sort of interactive difficulty with doing. I mean, I really think I should just go back to sometimes recording stuff and then putting it up afterward, because you have people who it seems like their entire slated interests, as far as my stuff is concerned, is just come in there and run amok, and I don't understand what would cause someone who is aware they don't like a person's majority of their content to just keep checking them out. I told you guys about this user who's made all these accounts to play counterfeit likes, and it was creepy to me. You have all of these issues going on, domestic and abroad, and that is the totality of their belief system. Okay, 14. I literally have a stream with my reaction to that. Again, my point exactly. I do like how when you have the interactions with people on here, they tend to kind of shift the discussion to something else. So, for example, when I turned this on, I was just predicting that I was going to talk about this homicide of this prominent activist. Now, nobody was saying anything about it or trying to investigate it. And then we've kind of touched on my disillusion with the way people handle the content here. Now, I think there's a very reasonable way to go about this, and that, it fits into the idea that in our current era, you don't have anyone who can actually just sit there and say, hey, let's speak about things. Okay, Dirk says, what was his name? I don't know who you're talking about. Brian says, this current format is what drew me to the chat. It brings more attraction to the chat. Yeah, but at what cost? I've had people try to argue back and forth. I've had people leave comments that throw me off. And it's a format that I'm not exactly that big a fan of, because it basically means that so long as, if I can get this thing out of the way, I could tell you. Never seen that window before. It's one of those names where you'd have to, it's very hard to spell in my opinion. It's Muad'Dib Baha. So, I mean, if you just type in Black Lives Matter activist shot February 2018, you should be able to get it. So that story will come up. We don't know, 14. That was why I was saying it was dumb that they didn't investigate it. Where was his justice? Completely absentee, because nobody could find a way of getting their face in front of a camera. So it all fits into its own narrative. This format is raw and requires no editing. Well, I wouldn't edit the recorded version either. I would just talk and go from one thing to another. And if people want to watch it, that's cool. If they didn't, oh well. And it's kind of funny. Recorded stuff generally is shorter because it's just me talking about that thing, and after I'm done, I'm done. So it's amusing that the more accessible you make yourself, the longer the content gets, and then people complain about the content's increase in length, in spite of the fact that they contributed to it. So one way or the other, you're again damned if you do, damned if you don't. That's the running theme of the stream. But yeah, I've really tried to tell people that these things are going to need. I don't expect people to change their ways. I don't predict that they're going to all of a sudden start being interested in their local elections and figuring out, who's been murdered this past week in their neighborhood so they can rally behind people to go and look for the killers. But if you're not willing to at least say to yourself, this is a problem, let's try to start some kind of group relating to it, there's not much that can be done. You can have one guy shouting, you know, something, about, oh, we need to change this, this needs to be adapted, this needs to be amended. But if he can't get a coalition of people to say the same thing, that voice is effectively shrinking or reduced. Okay, Brian saying something about the guillotine and how the next person that knocks the channel off topic. Uh, Old School Music says just a bunch of sheep, in my opinion. We're the few woke ones who actually pay attention to these issues. Yeah, but that's kind of the point I'm making here, because I literally, since that election, have sat around thinking of ways to expand this group of people, and I've tried to engage in one-on-one dialogues with people. I've tried to hand them, material. Oh, read this. Go to this website. And if you tell them to go somewhere, there's a high chance they won't go there. If you try to read it to them, they don't want you to read it to them. It really feels like a and what's weird is that they don't, this isn't just for like issues that are boring, right? I know a woman who had a Martin Luther King shirt, and I can guarantee you, as from just speaking to this person, the only things they know about him are his name. I have a dream that he got murdered. That is the sum total of their knowledge of that man. Same thing with Obama. I know a woman who defended him as if she was, his biggest supporter. But when I mentioned, him getting us in the five wars and, um, you know, trying to get Catholic voters to like him by claiming he was against gay marriage, and then the year afterwards saying he was for it, and thereby showing how much he wanted to trick them, um, or keeping up the surveillance state, or putting journalists in jail with the Espionage Act's repeal, or just ignoring it. Just loads and loads of things. They couldn't defend against it except to say that they had an opinion, in spite of the fact that they were the one who was upset with me for my own opinion. And I thought it was really ironic, because you're going to effectively bring a knife to a gunfight. The person knows more about this than you, but you find yourself still trying to challenge that person out of some belief system that you can. And when the person starts spewing logic and talking about things in a way that is fact based, and then inserting their opinion afterward, um, they don't want to hear it. Yeah, Brian, I've accepted that about him some years ago. But what I'm saying is that people, so this person again couldn't tell you about any of that stuff. All they could tell you was he was president and Obamacare, and that's about it. That is literally their entire sum total of knowledge about this man. They love him the most, or MLK too. They love them the most, but then they know them the least. Okay, 14 is missing the complete point of me mentioning what I said, which is, when did I say there was a problem with wearing a Martin Luther King shirt? I'm waiting. When did I say that? Please answer me. No, Dirk, he answered. You called her out. I didn't call her out. No, this person was called out by someone else. And again, the fact is, why would you? So you would wear clothing of people you know nothing about, other than a speech they gave and that they were murdered. Okay, Brian says the problem is wearing a shirt without knowing the meaning behind the emblem which you claim. Exactly. Think about this. Imagine if someone, I would be just as disgusted if you took a screenshot of me right now, put that on a shirt, and they ask you, "What do you know about Justin?" And then you go, he did uh, streams. What were those about? It would be just as problematic. Okay, Envoy says we still need to stream uh, where you show your. Oh, well, I'm working on that. I just have to get all of them together. There's loads and loads of them, and then give the commentary. I don't want it to be unedited and me stuttering and going, oh, like it is now with the off the cuff talk. Okay, Dirk says that's kind of bad luck. Last thing you want to be is on a t-shirt. No, I'm not saying it isn't, but what I'm telling you is that the people who have these symbols of these men's faces and portraits and whatever on their shirt do not know about what these people were. Know very little about them. I think that's a problem. I think that is a reflection of the willingness to go along with whatever trend. Because see, that person's been told, in the case of them, okay, that's a good person, and they've been told that by people that were probably around during that time. But that shows it's again going along with the flow. Just because someone tells you something, it must mean it's true. It must mean that you can have a shirt with that person's face on, even if you know nothing about them. They could like one aspect and just neglect to be blind to everything else they did. Yeah, but I mean, look, what I'm trying to convey to you is that for me to wear someone's picture on any article of clothing, I would have to like that person. And I would be able to tell you why I like that person. Yeah, Envoy, it's my stalker. That's who did that. Remember, it's always seven. No, it's one guy. That's why I was saying earlier that he literally has multiple accounts to screw with the rating system of the channel, or of just of the content in general. Yes, when I did my oligarchy stream, the number of people that were in there never went beyond seven, and the guy would log out, then log back into another account, and come in and dislike over and over again. And again, we're living in an era where half the population is poor. Homicides are occurring in every inner city across the U.S. And you have a majority of these politicians getting in office to screw over the middle class and keep wealth disparity at its finest. And this is this man's interest. This is his contribution to how things are going right now. Again, the world is burning, and all he can do is go on a guy who is literally unknown and mess with his streams every single day for over a week. If the other three, four, he's probably in it right now. The other three people who haven't liked, I'd rather they like if they don't want to. Oh well. But if you guys can't see where that's disturbing, I don't know what else to tell you. Old school says, ew. Apparently he's entertained by doing this. It's literally been every day. I can send you a screenshot of just all my uploads, just right after, over and over again. I am like his main guy, and it's always when I'm streaming. He's very quick to like all this stuff where I have like one just same person just over and over again. And this is why we are in dark times. People like that. This is a person who, if you went up to him and asked him, "What are your accomplishments?" Um, would probably be unable to list anything whatsoever. Guy with multiple. Yeah. Again, that's why it's dark times. because people who aren't even um, like he'll make 9 accounts to go after a guy on YouTube who's voicing an opinion he doesn't like, but he won't make 9 calls to police officers to, I don't know, report drug dealers in his community or something else. Person that's actually contributing to the his own life. He's more upset with me than he is with his governor, his tax commissioner. And again, it's because we have a lack of priorities and understanding of what actually matters. Brian says, I can't help but feel like I was a part of the 1% of rich people uh, that wouldn't act the same way they do towards the wage gap. Envoy says, the overall thing about all these is that we're humans and we should be able to find a common ground. You would think. Sissy middle school kid, they're the ones. It's a sad thing, man. You have people who are, well into the age of supposed maturity that still will go out and do that. Yeah. Um, but I know it's someone who is subscribed. They will sit there and literally just wait for someone to show up. Brian says, would you pay your fair share of taxes if you were part of the 1%? Um, not only do they, but yeah, here's the thing. Not only do they not pay for it, they also opt to just completely. I mean, they have offshore bank accounts. They find ways to make sure their cash is not accounted for, so they can get away with saying, "Oh, I don't have as much as you think I have." Uh, yeah, Envoy, it's someone in their 20s most likely. Wicked Jester says, these are indeed dark times. I can feel it every time I go out in public. Probably. No, man, the one thing I can always guarantee, like for the last several days, has been that person. They are obsessed with me. I mean, I am. It is freaky. Uh, Old School says it's in Chicago's West Side and South Side reeks of death. No one goes outside to play at night. Brian says makes you want to stay indoors. Now let me see. I don't know who she is. That's a guy. It's always a guy. I mean, I hate to admit it, 14, but most kind of weird behavior patterns are perpetuated by males. So, oh, but yeah, it's been going on for over a week now. Just that person and their desire to. They did this last Friday too. I had a stream that was literally like maybe 15, 14 minutes long, and then they just like 10 dislikes on that, and it was I knew it was just them. That was their entire purpose. So it's creepy. Just imagine if the purge was real. Uh, you guys are going on about this. Yeah, the inner city homicides are terrible. Mentioned that before. All right, so if anyone has anything else to say, let me know. If they don't, uh, I mean, I really almost do want to just make a stream directed toward that person because what you have to understand is that when you have the time to log on to multiple accounts, and they started this with the introvert they created. That was their first instance of daily persistence and just messing with my content. When you have the time to sit there and find yourself trying to play with the numbers on the YouTube videos of a guy who's on average getting what 50, 60 views, less than that. you ask yourself, again, even without knowing who this person is, what good are they causing for anyone or anything? So if the chat room wants to respond, let me know. If they don't, just go on to something else. So I thank those for participating, and again, I hope that we've been over the subjects of more so human behavior and just the personal choices of people when it comes to problems we currently face. You have an individual who has dedicated himself to playing with the rating system on the channel of an unknown user. Um, and it's people like this that we find ourselves having a difficult time uh, trying to make any good use of, because they choose to involve themselves in activities that are against the best interest of not only the person they call themselves striking out against, but also themselves. He will receive no Pulitzer Prize or um, you know acclaim for making multiple accounts to play with rating systems, and yet somehow takes some pleasure in it to himself. Um, it's a sad development, and I hope that the people who are you know more privy to these behaviors than I, because I've never seen anything like it, uh, are able to understand what could cause someone to just have that much dedication to. And I know it's a guy, so thank you, sir. I guess I appreciate the attention reluctantly, but so it's creepy. Um, just every day. So if everyone else is without words, old school music says you just had a thought. Let's hear it. Apparently, it's a long thought. It's a thought, but I just it happens. It happens. That's kind of thing. We are so we are given such short time to enjoy things that matter. Because on a day-to-day basis, you or I is doing something that is only serving to, let's say, finance us or meet some other short-term goal. So we're very rarely able to just sit back and do things that we find ourselves enjoying and getting fulfillment from. And I've chosen not to put my time and energy into people that you know can't find anything else to. Don't have a thumbs down, but well, it's not doing that at all. It's just it's creepy that you have a person who's literally dedicated their time to doing that. And if you can't see that, I don't know what else to tell you. And like I said, it fits the narrative of why we are in dark times. These systems that are screwed up can be changed, but if you have people such as this who dedicate their efforts towards things that are unproductive, such as following a guy every single day to mess with the rating system of his stuff, what else can we do if these are our soldiers tomorrow? Oh, I appreciate it.